We begin the news at this hour in West Africa, where the Court of Appeal in Lagos State, southwest Nigeria, has dismissed the suit filed by the governorship candidate of the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, Abdulaziz Adediran, and the Labour Party counterpart, Gbadebo Rhodes-Viver, against the election of Babajide Sanwo-Olu. Now, the three-member panel, led by Yagata Nimpa, in a unanimous decision, dismissed the grounds and appeal raised by Adediran. The panel affirmed the judgment of the tribunal that upheld the victory of Sanwo-Olu as the elected governor of Lagos in the March 11 election. The governorship election petition tribunal had on the 25th of September 2023 affirmed the re-election of Sanwo-Olu and his deputy, Obafemi Hamzat. Now, to discuss this, we are being joined by Emmanuel Ajoto, political analyst. Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for joining us.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, looking at the recent development, how significant is the Court of Appeal's decision in upholding Babajide Sanwo-Olu's victory in the Lagos State governorship election, especially in terms of its impact on the state's political landscape and the state's governance as well?
Well, I must say that most persons had no interest in what the judgment of the Supreme Court would be, because a lot of persons have lost interest in the kind of judgments that come from our judicial system. I mean, aren't you surprised that with all the controversies that came with the 2023 general March 18 gubernatorial election in Nigeria, only the Kano State governorship election was affected by the court judgment? It tells you something. I mean, if that is the case, I mean, we could barely say, we can authoritatively say that the Kano State governorship election was one of the few elections that were free and fair, yet it's the only gubernatorial election that has been affected so far by court judgment. It tells you something. It tells you that the judiciary is really under a lot of pressure, and it's really having its toll on the kind of judgment that comes from our court system. So, I mean, a lot of persons were not interested; they were indifferent. So, there is little or no change to what it brings to the governance of the state. I mean, that's it.
Okay, now, Emmanuel, for this kind of decision to be made or upheld in this case, there has to be a strong legal argument or precedent by the court. Now, what key legal arguments and or precedents would we say were cited by the Court of Appeal in the tribunal's judgment, upholding the judgment, and of course dismissing the appeal that was filed by Abdulaziz Adediran?
That is the challenge. This is exactly the challenge, the precedent. When Justice Datijo retired of recent, he raised this concern of the discrepancies in judgment that now emanates from our courts, and this is exactly what we are saying. I mean, you hear a court gives a particular judgment in this particular part of the country, and you hear another judge saying a different thing in the other part of the country. The judgment that was upheld today by the court, remember that the tribunal held that the petitions that were brought by the PDP gubernatorial candidate and that of the electoral matters. However, if you have been following the kind of judgments that have been coming from our courts, some other courts in other parts of the country have actually ruled, I mean, decisively on some of these issues when it was brought to their various courts in other parts of the country. But so this is exactly what we're talking about: the discrepancies in the judgment. I tell you one thing. I tell you this authoritatively: that there is a cabal that is influencing our court judgments, and if you are in the good books of that cabal,
Emmanuel.
If you are in the
Apologies.
Yes.
Could you please hold that thought? We want to quickly take a look at what the Deputy Governor of Lagos State, who was in court earlier, has to say, and then we'll come back to continue the conversation. Please hold that thought.
Okay.
It was tied to various cases, various other cases. So, for me, it seems that the tribunal did their job. And talking to other lawyers, to lawyers, senior ones, and of course the young ones, they were of the opinion that this is a solid case. So, you leave it to the judiciary and you do what you have to do. That's it. That's for the lawyers to be apprehensive, not for me.
Going forward, so what does this mean for governance in Lagos? I mean,
well, we are doing our job. We just keep going. Remember, the election took place months ago. The people of the state voted for us. So that for us is the most important. The ability to convince fellow citizens, Lagosians, on what we intend to do. So those are the things we must focus on and do. So we will not be distracted by this. It's important. It's part of our process. In my view, it improves our democratic credentials. However, we must do what you have to do. And that's what the governor and myself and the whole cabinet, that's what we are doing, satisfying the needs of Lagosians.
Well, that is what the Deputy Governor, I beg your pardon, of Lagos State had to say in court. Now, Emmanuel, back to you. In what ways would you say that this decision might affect the credibility and the public perception of the electoral process in Lagos State? And what are the implications that it will have on the future election disputes or legal challenges?
Personally, I think the decision of the Labour Party candidate and the PDP gubernatorial candidate to take the case in the court, to court is a welcome development, because if you have been following the trends of politics in Lagos State, you notice that I think this will be the first time that after the elections, we will be having court cases on the tribunal and now the Court of Appeal. So I think for that, it's a welcome development. I mean, because if the status quo is not challenged, I mean, the kind of irregularities we saw in the last election will continue to go on unchallenged. So in that sense, I think it's a win for us. Sincerely, like I said earlier on, I had no expectations from the judiciary. I mean, I'm very sure a lot of persons didn't have, expectations as well. I mean, based on the trend of judgments that have been emanating from our courts. So I think the only benefit of what we have seen is the fact that, we've taken the first step to ensure that we challenge the status quo. So I would like to credit that to the Labour Party candidate and the candidates of the People's Democratic Party for challenging that status quo. So we'll build on that. We'll continue to do advocacy. One of those things that personally I've been advocating for is for us to conclude our court cases before anybody resumes office on May 29. It will help us nip this trend of off-cycle election in a board like the ex-president Jonathan stated. And it will also bring some kind of credibility to the kind of judgments we get from our courts. So the only win I see in what has happened is the fact that, two people were able to challenge the status quo that have been on the ground in Lagos. I mean, so that's it for me. Nothing more. I mean, there is no change in the hands of government. The same party that manipulated its way to governance.
Right. Okay, I think there's a glitch in Emmanuel's audio, but thank you so much, Emmanuel in absentia, for joining us on the news to discuss the development. We do appreciate your time with us.